So for us, doing it from a storytelling standpoint, it was important to build things like the place and the characters and stuff like that, so we knew what we were talking about. So we picked Detroit. We picked Detroit because it's a place of declining resources. It's a place that has a legacy of success but is now struggling, and it's also a place that has a unique problem that you don't see everywhere, and you certainly don't see Los Angeles, and that's areas that have become ghost towns. So specifically, we were looking for an area that was, underused. And what we found, and we used a place called home as our model. So we're not talking school as much as we're talking educational community center type of thing. And we said what it's really going to take to spark a change is a unique partnership. The unique partnership would be someone from the community, probably comes out of a church. We called her Amelia. And she would be a person there's someone like this in every community, someone who's really connected, knows the community, is a good communicator, that kind of stuff. She might not be connected to a lot of resources, but she has a lot of human capital, okay? And the unique partnership is her with someone probably who worked in real estate, someone who is a large commercial developer. So if you could partner those two sources together, I have buildings, I have community connections, and I can get sweat equity together. If we can create that partnership, then we have a spark. Okay, so everything we did was built around that. So again, we're looking for an area, probably somewhere where this commercial developer owns some buildings, but is kind of like a ghost town or a dead street or a dead block. Okay, so that's where we're going to start, and we're going to try to bring life to that area. Okay, we're going to try to bring life back to a ghost town. All right, so the first thing we did was we said, before we even start, before we dig a shovel into the ground or paint a sign, we're going to do something like a mind shift session. We're going to do a facilitated session with invited stakeholders. Okay, so this isn't an open public forum where anybody can come and throw in their grievances. This is, all right, let's find 20 people to start with. 20 people who either have sweat equity in the neighborhood or community resources, or people who are business partners who have some physical resources or capital that they can apply to this program. And it was important to us that it wasn't all based around capital. So this isn't a lightning strike, $10 million drop in our lap type of situation. We can actually do this with very little money, I think, not a ton of money. Okay, so we would hold a large facilitated session like this, and the idea of that is to craft a community solution together. So this isn't broadcast, this is dialogue. And we want to hear from all the people and craft something together. Ultimately, what we landed on for this area, which I think is a really unique idea, is this is our mission statement. We can only do so much, but we can raise a generation of kids who can save this neighborhood. So the focus is on the youth and equipping them, knowing that any neighborhood turnaround is a 20, 30, 40-year project anyway, equipping the youth to do that as it goes along. So that's who we're teaching. We needed an identity. And because we were in Detroit, we talked about cars and everything like that. And the name for a really beautiful car that's restored is Cherry, right? I made it Cherry. So we called our community Cherry Town. Okay? So Cherry, and that was important in a storytelling sense for us to have an identity. As soon as we came up with that, everything became cherries and cherry pie and cherry ice cream and murals with big cherries on them, but it gave us an identity to start with. Okay? So the first thing that happens is that after this facilitated session, Amelia and our commercial developer, they both have jobs. Amelia's job is, after we've got some kind of plan, Amelia's job is to start getting the neighborhood together and to start using her connections to get people who will throw in right from the jump to help renovate the space. Our developer gives us a space that we can use. It might not even be a permanent space, even if we got it for 5 years or a 10-year lease or something like that. That would really help us build this. His job while she's doing that is to go create more business partnerships. So to find more people, whether it's a Home Depot who can give some building resources, or it's a bank who can give some capital, or a grocer who can give some food, anything like that. Okay? So we start with that one building, and we're rule breakers. The one disagreement we maybe had in our group was when to bring government in. Okay? It was unclear. We didn't really agree on that. Some people's feeling was government allows you to get more resources and tax. My feeling was that government's just going to be a problem right from the get-go, and they're going to kind of see what can't be done, and they're going to put up barriers and talk about rules and all these things that are not useful to us, especially early on in the beginning. Obviously, at some point they have to come in, but I was more like, go for it, break some rules, and apologize later. Okay, so the first thing we would do, we went through the milestones, the first thing we would do is the facilitated session. After that, once we have the space commitment and we have a basic vision of how we're trying to do this, again, we're trying to raise a generation of kids that can change the community. So we have that, we have the basic vision. She goes out and recruits sweat equity. He goes out and recruits business equity. Storytelling is the other great thing we chanced upon. Not only do we need facilitated sessions, we need someone like John, we need someone like Michael, we need someone who can tell the story, and we're going to document every step of this. And the reason why we're going to document every step of this is because turnaround stories are interesting and they're fascinating to people. And kids being recovered and learning are fascinating to people. So if we publish those stories, and we were thinking through short videos, but a series, right? So something drops every month, a 5-minute video, a 4-minute video that drops every month. Those would help us to crowdfund money from outside of the community in. Okay? So we would.
I just wanted to add
please.
to that one of the basic principles we started with in all this was kind of a nucleus effect, that we had to start with the community and a very core community. So when we talked about going out and using, let's say, these films to raise money, it would be very targeted to find people that are from this community that might have left through the diaspora of all this change, that might be living in other cities, but we could target them through digital media, use this content, but we're finding people that have a vested interest in this community. They have a connection, an emotional connection to this community, and that becomes the glue, and we kind of work out in phases from that core community. So this is really bound by core community, but not necessarily just geographically right now. It's more of the connection points to it.
And because of those connections, those people might help us fundraise a little bit, but even more, they'd help us share that story and get it out to more and more people and stuff like that. All right, so we also said, again, we didn't need a pile of money, so we're not talking about building something probably as beautiful as what we saw yesterday, which is clean and gorgeous and a great space and this amazing music space and everything like that. We're gonna start very organically and just go for it and hit the ground running. Our early services that we would do are things like media training to assist with the storytelling. So we would love the kids to assist with the storytelling. If you've ever been on a movie set, you know there's 9 million jobs in the creation of media. Kids need to learn to write, kids need to learn to shoot, edit, sound editing, social media awareness so that they can share this stuff. There's a lot of skills that can be learned just so that you don't have to pay a giant team. You bring in John and a couple people like that, but he then uses the kids in the community as a way to start telling these things and start doing these. So it's both training and publishing at the same time and crowdsourcing and fundraising at the same time. Early services would be things, we would look at what the community needed. We knew food was probably going to be an early thing. So food could be a very, very early service that we could do through partnerships, even if it was just simple as distributing some healthy food and stuff like that. We would want to grow food there. So there would be some agriculture training and some community gardening going on there. And that would help us with that too. Since she's
One
probably...
thing I wanted to add on that
Sure.
part of the story is that, there's big cherry growing in Michigan, so I've learned through this process. And we could reach out to the local agricultural community and find, I think his name was Jerry Cherry. And Jerry Cherry came in and actually provided the training and kind of the soil and the initial thing to start actually planting cherry trees there, so we can actually, as well as a bunch of other things that we could start growing there, so we start feeding and funding it, but we're also using that as a relevant way to bring in another partner to help fund, educate, and be part of the community.
And again, that helps with identity, right? Everything's built around that identity. So we're not community center, we're Cherry Town, right? So there's things like that, yeah. So agricultural training, she's probably connected to the churches, Amelia is, so maybe we even just start some church services in there just so people are showing up to this dead street. And that gives them something to do. We have a strong belief that activity generates activity, right? That as long as some buzz was starting to happen, other things would start to happen. In fact, that's going to be one of our milestones, is when things happen that surprise us on that block, okay? Tech training. We talked passionately about the idea that without spending a lot of money, you could put 12 computers downstairs, allow for some easy technical training, or even just allow of use of those computers, like in the way a WeWork space does or something like that, so a community can come in who doesn't have access to a Starbucks or who doesn't have access to computers, and they can just come in and work and do whatever they wanted. So sometimes during the day that lab is used for tech training. Sometimes it's just open space. Other times it's maybe used by the media team to create some of this media and distribute the media. Okay, so those are our earliest services. Our next, the other thing we would really do is murals. We have a passion for murals. Dead spaces need color. They need creativity. You give kids an opportunity to paint and do stuff and create stuff. It's also great to film that kind of stuff and create stories out of it, that kind of stuff. Once we started getting some buzz, one of our early milestones was to create true pop-up events, right? So not just in the building, but across the block. What could we do with all our community partners to create a pop-up event? So this dead street, next Saturday, it's not going to be dead at all. There's going to be booths and tents and different things going on and stuff like that just to create that buzz. We really strongly believe that the buzz will generate buzz. And just once there's people there, things will start to happen. We know we're doing it right when we start seeing surprises, like other buildings pop up in that space and space is being bought. Again, one of the keys was for the large commercial developer, they're not just coming out of their heart on this, they have a vested interest because they own real estate there. They have a vested interest in this neighborhood coming back. So at the end of the day, this could actually be profitable for them in a huge, huge way on a big scale. Team, what else did I miss?
I think the other component of it was this idea of really making this kind of a useful center for education. So kind of a combination between almost like a WeWork and an after-school program where you open up the space for, one, the parents and other people to come in there and start using the space. You're providing the food that you're growing there is another incentive, but really an after-school program for kids, a place for them to get online, use computers, work in the garden, kind of be involved in the community. That was a big part of this, so it actually starts laying the groundwork for their potentially for a school to come in, for potentially to bring other things, other components into it. But that idea of kind of organically adding one thing to another and kind of creating this as a community hub and a center, and that's why we thought the WeWork model was kind of an interesting model in hybridizing that with almost an after-school program.
Cool. Again, not a lot of cash going into the building structure itself. That's done through partnerships, that's done through sweat equity. Our cash is going to things like buying computers, paying a media team to lead the media, paying for security because safety is just key from the jump. Safety would be key.
Don't forget how you earned success.
From barren to life, is that what you're talking about? That's real success. When the people who are throwing their hearts into it say, you know what, I'd live there now. Yeah, I'd buy a house on that street. That's real success.
Well, I think, Michael, part of our premise was from what we learned from the Humanizing book, which is that there was always a really tight community tie to the schools. And so we start with the community and then build the schools with the community involvement. That was one of the keys for all the outliers that we found, was that there was a tight community involvement, and I think that was the idea that kind of drove us towards this. We build this, and then the schools will be part of it and grow from there. I think that was
We could see a time where if the videos are doing well and we're getting 20,000 hits and 40,000 hits every time we put stuff up, okay, let's print some t-shirts in the basement. Now we got cherry t-shirts going out to the nation for fundraising and all these cool things based around our identity. And eventually we turn this ghost town into something where kids flourish.
You're turning it into a brand.
Yeah,
We're turning it into a brand.
It's interesting just to see within the group, and we were talking about this, how once we gave it an identity, how much more emotionally we all got connected to this thing, and the ideas just started flowing left and right. And it actually came from, Joe, if you want to talk about your buddy's thing that he did.
Yeah, sure. So I just have a real world example. A friend of mine, Mr. Graham Basie, grew up in Ohio, left, had a media career, and decided to come back and invest in Cleveland, Ohio, and he bought an old firehouse. He bought this firehouse in an area that was in blight. It was totally dilapidated. He decided to name it. Hinge Town is its name. You can go check it out. It's got an Instagram. And literally it's this area in between two semi-prosperous areas that was a dead zone. But now it has coffee shops, yoga shops, restaurants, everything that goes along in it. They have a massive agricultural area. I think it might be one of the largest community gardens in America is there. And they've gotten press from everywhere around it because Graham is from media. So he started making videos about what he was doing. He started sharing it. And it was one of the core ideas behind the media studio and teaching kids how to use media is because, one, it teaches them to do something that's actually beneficial, but it also has an output. It's got assets, things that you can actually use to go and tell the story. Those videos get out there, all of a sudden local news channels start picking it up. They want to do a story on it because everybody loves good stories as they come to be. And, but at the core of all of this really is this idea, and Rex, you just nailed it right there. It's the idea that you actually have to create a brand, because once you've done that, you can literally point everything back to that. And everybody starts having big, giant thoughts that can kind of circle around this. At the core of all this, though, really is once that's set up, everything starts getting better there. There's a reason for the graffiti to be taken down. There's a reason to fix potholes because people are now coming into there. There's a reason to start looking at every building going, I wonder what could be there. I wonder what could be there. What are we missing right now? Why are there no dentists here right now? All of these things combined together effectively help a public school that might be located near there start to become a more desirable piece of the entire community. There are all sorts of places that are great communities that people move into, but they're not in a good school system, so the kids get carted off to a private school someplace else, and there still lacks an educational center for a community there. So I think it was just trying to roll all of this together into this idea that at the end of the day, we want the local news channel and then the national news channel to have a whole bunch of stuff to look at and say, there's a beautiful story here, and it's about the rehabilitation of a community. And it truly starts with a single person. We called it the Vanguard for Change. But it's a person that's in that community that is going to be the almost like the spiritual leader of Renaissance. So.
There's just